powered by Riverside FM.
Welcome to Do Good Work Podcast, hosted by Terrell Strayhorn and Jaquin Johnson. We specialize in taking a deep dive into issues that truly matter. Each episode unpacks the challenges and opportunities facing today's leaders, from classrooms to boardrooms, offering insights that inspire real change. By redefining success, we're changing lives, empowering people everywhere to create environments where everyone feels a sense of belonging, whether at home, work, or school. So hey, sit back, relax, grab your favorite beverage, and join us as we explore the issues shaping our futures, one meaningful conversation at a time. Let's go!
All right. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Do Good Work Podcast. I'm your co-host, Terrell Strayhorn, joined by Jaquin Johnson. And due to, who knows, maybe you saw the first take, technical difficulties, we are back. And hopefully this time we are back and it's going to keep going straight. If you were with us first time, you already know how we're going to do this tonight. We're going to start off with our name game. We are going to ask you to play along with us using the chat at your favorite platform. We should be showing across X, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And then after that, we'll come back, watch a video or two, talk about this whole work-related issues, work-related data-driven decision-making, a couple things in the job corner, and then wrap up with the segment around workplace relationships. But I'll cook it over to Jaquin, talk about our name game.
Absolutely. So tell us how you're feeling. Make sure you drop it in the chat, whichever platform you're using. We like to start every episode using the first letter of your last name to describe your day or week. Toss it over to you to go first. Strayhorn S.
Well, again, if you watched it the first time, my word had a full week of retreats and meetings and working with faculty and staff on getting ready for school readiness, and grew through the week to really appreciate people who, as we like to say, are 10 toes down, keep it straightforward, keep it real. And no matter, my best example is, we had a retreat for the Division of Academic Affairs this week, and there were countless moments. But at one point, someone just did not know at all what they were doing with their technology, though they had pretended to know, and I could tell they did not know. And so at some point, I was like, you know what, look, I can help you. And I helped. And then they came back and were like, hey, I apologize for kind of putting on and wasting a lot of time acting like I knew what I was doing. I really don't. But and I told them, I just appreciate the fact that you were accountable to it, like you owned up to it. So straightforward is the word that's straightforward is the word that's sticking out to me. And first letter of my last name, S. Straightforward. For you?
Yeah, good. So I would go with Johnson J. Joints. As I said earlier, I've been running a lot more. Joints are where two or more bones connect, enabling movement. As a former runner in college, we did it was kind of required to stretch. Either that's dynamic stretching or static stretching. I don't do that as much now, and I've realized that how important it is. So before runs now, I'm going to stretch because my joints are telling me activate these muscles before you get going. I think you're muted.
If you are listening in, thank you. Drop into the chat the word that is your word of the week. Take the first letter of your last name. If your last name is Smith, it's an S. If your last name is Frank, it's an F. If your last name is whatever it might be, y'all know the first letter of your last name. Drop into the chat what it's going to be. And while you're doing that, we're going to put it on the screen. But before we go there, tonight we're going to start with a story that, as I said earlier, really should concern every American, not just those who sit on one particular side of the aisle or the other, because it's not really a partisan issue. And that's not the way we're trying to approach it, but one that really should catch the attention of all of our listeners who care about truth, who care about transparency, who care about the role of science and data information in decision making. As you know, if you've been watching the news this week, President Trump has fired the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is a nonpartisan agency, nonpartisan official who is responsible for overseeing the numbers that tell us how the economy is doing, especially in terms of job growth, job loss, and inflation, underemployment, and employment. So why does this matter? Because when you disrupt the independence of these federal agencies and groups, you don't just end up firing a person, although I think that's what the news will often catch. You also undermine the power of truth, the power of transparency, in many sense, the principles of democracy. It's up to us to talk about it, but we thought we might bring it in to talk about, how do we continue as a politicized society, politicized democracy, which is fine. We got political perspectives and they don't have to be the same, but our differences in our political perspective shouldn't necessarily encroach upon our ability to access data, to use data, to know the truth, especially as American people. And so we got this 2-minute clip that hopefully we'll play this time, and it'll give us a little segue. Then we'll come back and discuss it all.
According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, only 73,000 jobs were added in July. That's well below expectations. But July's weak numbers were just the tip of the iceberg. Some economists are pointing to a larger issue, with the government now saying their previously released job numbers were way off in May and June. They're revising those totals down by a combined 258,000 jobs. President Trump took to Truth Social criticizing that jobs report. He said that he is directing his team to fire the head of the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, an administration official confirming to NBC News that she has been fired. So let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor, also with us, Investopedia editor-in-chief Caleb Silver. Yamiche, first to you. We have to start with that breaking news. Of course, many presidents have been upset with poor jobs reports prior, but why is President Trump now firing the person in charge of essentially counting those numbers?
Well, he's essentially accusing her of manipulating the numbers. And as a result, she has been officially fired by the Trump administration. We should note that she was confirmed by a bipartisan group of senators in January 2024. That being said, I want to read to you part of what the president put on his social media site announcing this firing. He put in part, "I was just informed that our country's job numbers are being produced by a Biden appointee," he said, "who faked the job numbers before the election to try to boost Vice President Kamala Harris's chances of victory." He went on to say, "We need accurate job numbers. I've directed my team to fire this Biden political appointee immediately. She will be replaced by someone much more competent and qualified." And he went on to say, "Important numbers like this must be fair and accurate. They can't be manipulated for political purposes." He also went on to call the sort of having to revise May and June's numbers down by 258,000 jobs a major mistake. So the president here both accusing this now former commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics of manipulating numbers, but also saying that overall that there was this mistake that really was, in his mind, a deal breaker for him and the commissioner.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news.
All right. So there it is. All right. So, we have a situation here where person who is doing their job, and of course we can have discussions about whether or not they did it well, did they do it right, but I know as a social scientist who has studied labor market outcomes in my own research, particularly trying to look at differences between sort of salary, wages, pay, job satisfaction between people of color and white Americans or white citizens. And I've studied college students a lot, so that particular paper is looking at college students' labor market outcomes. I depended on data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics to run that analysis. And it's part of the U.S. Department of Labor, but operates independently to protect the credibility of economic data, to do, in theory, the exact opposite of what they're being accused of saying right now, that they're designed to offer highly credible, highly balanced, and and ethical kinds of information. So political interference, of course, hasn't happened with most presidencies, but now we have this, and it's starting to question the trust we can put in that data and information. I think it's interesting and unfortunate that in this report that says the numbers are declining and that corrects for earlier numbers being off, inflated. These numbers are hard to collect because you're collecting them in real time, and so sometime a person might have been unemployed, and unemployment has a particular definition to it, but they might have lost a job, but especially in today's multiple gig economy, the person's not actually unemployed. They just lost one of their revenue streams or one of their jobs. And so I think this, it's natural to have some give and take, some up and down to these numbers. There is not the first time numbers have changed, but I think for it to be presented in this way that raises questions about one's competence and raises questions about the public's ability to trust the report can be quite different. Those are my initial thoughts. Yours, Jaquin?
Yeah, I think that you said this the data is collected in real time, and one thing we kind of have to ask ourselves is, operationalize unemployment. But I've seen a pattern with this president. I'm trying to, as you were talking, take this, I guess, be careful with how I approach it, because there's many people on different sides of the outlets to this podcast, but there's a pattern. If they don't want you in the seat, they typically just cough it up that it's incompetent. If you're not on their side or agree with what they're saying, then you're pretty much against them. I think this person is highly qualified. I mean, if their work did not demonstrate that they could do the job, then they wouldn't be in there in the first place. But this is something that we see time and time again. I think it's going to continue to happen in these next 3-4 years.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the fact that, the questions that are being raised about the accuracy of the report, as well as the professionalism and capability of the person, are big issues in a way. So, I mean, this idea that struck me when I was reading the story earlier, and certainly hearing the video now, is, and I just had this conversation actually with some people this week. So let's say that the May and the June report had some errors in it, right? And maybe these errors rise to the level of being beyond the typical adjustments to these numbers that would happen in a typical month-to-month kind of period. The story goes that this particular commissioner was honest and transparent and admitted these numbers. This report corrects for those earlier numbers that were reported that, can't remember the exact word they used, but were larger than inflated. To me, that's actually a sign of personal and professional maturity. There's nothing that I respect more as a person, as a friend, as a family member, as a supervisor, than someone who can be accountable to their own actions and can admit when they were wrong, apologize when they know they intentionally did something that they should not have done. No need for you to tell me what to do. They can course correct on their own. They can own up to it. So, I guess to have a professional who generates a report and in the report admits that there are corrections to previous reported numbers, to me, that is not incompetence. That is actually the essence of competence. That's not a person who's inept as a leader. To me, that's the hallmark of a true leader. That's not a person who can't be trusted. It's the hallmark of a person who can be trusted.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there are many out there who would not report that, and make the correction or update the information. So having someone in that seat that updates the numbers and call out or highlight that there was an error, or a typo, whatever it may be, I think is honorable, because there are not too many people out there. I think you also want that on your team, someone who can come to you and say that, hey, in the last report we missed the mark somehow. Here's an update, whether it's the following report, could be within a month, 2 months, whatever. I think it's like more so like when they find it or identify the issue, they course correct, make the correction, and present it. Um, Again, there are so many out there who will hide it, or camouflage to protect themselves. So to have someone, because you said like we really, we need this data. We lean on it, for several reasons, and it must be accurate. So commendable. Unfortunately, they lost their job because of it.
Yeah. And that's a good segue into the next segment. But I mean, there are people behind these numbers, and I think that's something that I definitely spent time talking to my own team this week and talking with our leadership on campus, that, behind every metric, behind every initiative, behind every report, there are people. And so this is one person, yes, a commissioner who lost their job. But I mean, it's also a clear sign to people that have to produce these reports, have to run these analyses. No one report is written by any one person. So anyone who's thinking, oh, well, this is the commissioner who wrote the report, that one report has, especially most of these federal reports, have anywhere between 5, 6, 7, 10 authors on them. And so I think it's a message also to those who are often behind the curtain that, there are expectations of what these data and numbers should say. There are expectations about what these reports should signal. And it seems to be that if the message is not positive, if it's not growth, if it's not expansion, if it's not upbeat, then there tend to be consequences. I think that's, as a social scientist, all of my experiments, all of my research does not end up the way I expect. I don't always confirm existing theory. I don't always find what I expected to find. There are circumstances in research and analysis, especially with data, especially those data based on humans, where you can either find the opposite, you find no statistically significant difference, you find no growth and change. And though it's applied to education or social science, you might invest lots of money into some program or initiative, but despite those investments, you don't reap the kinds of benefits that you desire. So we have to keep that in mind. All right, we'll mosey on to our job corner. So we talk a lot about, the job corner. We've got people applying for jobs. We have certainly a large number of people, according to this report, who, are without employment due to the state of the economy. I mean, there are people who are now trying to suggest that maybe it's the tariffs, maybe it's the taxes. I'm not sure what the source of it. That goes beyond the scope of tonight's episode. But people who are without jobs. And so that means, if that report is correct, there are many more people who will be looking for jobs. Certainly talked to several folks today who are in that situation. So what advice do you have for those who are listening and want to apply for jobs?
Yeah, I think that, even if you're not looking for a job, I think this is a pretty practical tip for you, is to always update your resume. So if you've earned a certificate, went through a training, have a recent published piece, just go ahead and add it to your resume kind of immediately. So when it's, even if you're not looking, again, if you're not looking for a job now, when it's, if you look for it in the future, it's already ready to go. So I would say update your resume pretty regularly.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice. I would say, and I really was thinking about this earlier in the week. There are some folks who, well, one in particular, I can't wait to see where he goes. But there's a student at Virginia Union University, Donato, that's all I'll say for now, who did an internship in the provost office this summer. He's an incredible young man, and he just did his final presentation. I think it was Friday. During his presentation, he talked about the fact that he completed several LinkedIn certificates, and he talked through the domains of skills that he studied, and then he showed the badges on the screen. They were quite beautiful. And so I was just curious about it, and I asked him, like, how much did he pay for them? He said that I think all of the certificates that he took were free. So to anyone who's applying to jobs and who's looking to upskill, looking for some credentials and other kinds of ways to distinguish yourself from the competition, I highly recommend checking out LinkedIn Learning and go to the certificate and badges. Find the ones, I mean, you can pay for them if there are some out there that you really want, but there are lots that are free. Things that you can do around fundamentals of AI, fundamentals of design and Canva design. There are the whole Microsoft Office suite. Microsoft Office has an AI tool called Copilot. There's a Copilot certificate. And these aren't things that you have to take 20 years to earn. Some of them are certificates that can be completed in 4 hours. So again, it's just things that you can put on your resume, skills that you have that are relevant to today's job market and economy. And it's certainly a way to surpass the competition. So LinkedIn Learning certificates. All right. So say it again, and then I'll kick it over to Jaquin to talk us through our next topic and video. But if you are on LinkedIn, tuning in from LinkedIn, be sure, go to our LinkedIn page. I'll drop it into the chat while Jaquin's talking, and click the follow button at the top. We got about 25 more people that we need to hit our goal of 500. Follow us on LinkedIn.
I actually have the link right here. I can go ahead and put it in there. And like I said, we have been doing this challenge for about a week now, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 2 weeks. I'm not sure. But again, we're 25 away. So if you enjoy the content that we share in the podcast, please feel free to copy and paste that link into some of your group chats on social media. Tell them to follow us. The next topic we're going to talk about tonight is workplace relationships. I think we touched on this a couple of times throughout the podcast. We definitely do it in our work and on social media. I have a clip here I'm going to show us. It's probably like 15 seconds, and then we'll get into discussion.
In today's competitive work environment, one secret to success is building strong workplace relationships. Renowned leaders like Sheryl Sandberg emphasize how meaningful connections lead to collaboration and innovation. Take, for instance, the story of a project manager who transformed a struggling team by fostering open communication and trust among his colleagues. As bonds strengthened, productivity soared, and project deadlines were met with ease. To emulate this in your career, prioritize networking opportunities, engage with colleagues authentically, and actively listen to their ideas. Remember, the key to thriving professionally starts with the relationships you cultivate. In today's
So again, like this video said, is that workplace relationships are key to building strong teams and being productive. Through our work, we've realized and identified that, authentic relationships around trust. Trust has 3 components, which are intentions, behaviors, and commitments, are key to really forming meaningful relationships with team members. These are people who, some of us go to work 40 plus hours a week, and no one wants to go to work and hate being around people that they have to be around. Because if that's the case, then your mind is so worried about who likes me, who doesn't like me. You're walking on eggshells to see if I can talk to them today. Is it okay to text them? Can we do a FaceTime call? Whatever it may be, work is not getting done because of that, and productivity is not, is low. Morale is low. All these things are, pulling us away from the goals that are set for the team, the company. Whether that's two people doing the work or 50,000 people doing the work, it doesn't matter. Relationships are key. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's part of what I was saying about earlier with straightforward. I think what I appreciate is that, I really come to appreciate. I don't know that I valued it as much when I was, in high school, although I probably should have. But relationships are in many ways our lifeline, and so I'm very blessed to have a lot of deep, meaningful, lifelong relationships, and work and personal. I mean, I have, just thinking the other day, because of my work now with my campus, how many of my teams from my previous campus I'm still extremely close to. I don't think I don't have an institution where I've worked where I don't have, you know, folks who are in my wheelhouse, like in my center, on my team, in my institute, in on the faculty with me, who I'm not still incredibly close with. And doesn't mean all people, but to have those relationships that persist over the course of time, and to know people who don't have that at all and who struggle to maintain trusting, honest relationships with people, it makes me reflective of like, so what works in these? And you talked about it. I mean, trust is a concept that we've written about and talked about. And I won't remember all the elements, although I should, because we talked about it so much. But talking through, one, it's about delivering on one's commitments. The other day we were in a retreat, and our provost, university provost, was talking and making a couple of comments like, I'm going to make sure that the team sends out the academic calendar. I'm going to make sure the team sends out the annual plan. I'm going to make sure that each of you get a summary email of today's talking points. And while he was saying it, I took out a sheet of paper and just started writing down all of the commitments he made, so that ultimately I can make sure that the team delivered on it. And then I texted him and said, hey, took track of all of the commitments you made today. We all made, but I mean, he made most of them, as obviously as our leader. And at the end of the day, he came up and he said, called me out and said he really appreciated it because he had not been taking note of it. And one of the things we know about trust is it's about intentions, it's about one's behaviors, it's about your commitments, but it's about one's ability to not just make commitments or make promises, but to actually keep them. So it depends on a level of honesty and transparency. There's no room for or need for lack of transparency, lack of honesty in work or personal relationships. That if what you ultimately want for people to trust you is that they can trust your intentions. And that means that you are forthcoming about what you intend to say, what you intend to do, and that they can trust your behavior. So there's no sneakiness. There's no, I'm going behind someone's back. I'm not necessarily pulling away from the group to go off and say something that I can't say in front of other people, or that there's not a conversation that can't be had in front of someone who I say I trust, that I keep it, like I said earlier, we keep it real. So I know for me, I have really come to, I would say value, but I mean, I'm also coming to a place where I expect that from people, that if folks want me to be committed to them and the project, they want me to share my intentions and deliver on those intentions, and then to be consistent in my behaviors, I expect the same from them. And so I found this week that I have a lot of that in my relationships, especially my work relationships with my current colleagues. And I found myself just often being very grateful for it. So, I think one of the things that gets in the way, well, let's talk about that. What are some of the things that get in the way of having these consistent and trusting work relationships? And also, what strategies do we have for our listeners and how to build those?
Yeah, so first I want to say like intentions anchors behavior. And I think that, we want to build trust with teammates and team members. And I think that we can at times feel when people's intentions are not pure, whether their words say that, they have your back, they're 10 toes down, they want to support you. And then, you give them an opportunity where you are, what is going on? Can you see me? I think okay.
No.
You give them an opportunity where you're vulnerable, you're honest, you're transparent, and it is used against you, or they become upset and irate, and unfortunately, you feel that they turn your back. They turn their back against you at a time where you were honest with them. And at some point, when do you stop putting yourself in those positions? Because I do believe that those moments, those interactions can at some point make one feel numb and come to disassociate themselves with that individual. Your thoughts?
Yes. All right, y'all drop something in the chat, say something. I think, this is probably complicated, kind of not complicated, difficult conversation for some people to have, because I think it requires a level of, someone asked me this week, they said something about emotional, and I can't, non-emotionality. I think we have to, yeah. So we were talking about a colleague who reacts a certain way about things, and they were just struggling, like, why do they react this way at work? And people were like, well, I think it's maybe this, I think it's maybe that. And one of the offerings I made to the conversation was, I think they're also it's just very emotional for them. Like they're making it, people would say, making it personal, taking it personally when it's not personal. So I think we have to depersonalize some of this, and we have to manage our emotions, both in personal and professional relationships, to just maintain a standard. So to me, honesty is not about what a person said or how a person reacts. If you're going to be honest, you're going to be honest, right? Being honest may require some courage. Like if I didn't come to work until 9:05, even if my boss went off the last time I came to work at 9:05, I don't lie to my boss and say, I've been here since 8:55, and then say, well, it's your fault because you went off the last time I said I was here at 9:05. So now I'm just going to start lying about that's a lie. So I think people conditionalize, if that's a word, the truth. And the moment we do that, we just have to admit, we can have the conversation. We can talk about it, whether it's with HR, whether it's with each other, whether it's with our supervisor, whether it's with our parents, but we're no longer talking about the truth, because the truth is not conditional. Honesty is not conditional. If you lied, and you owe it to your colleagues, you owe it to your friends, you owe it to your family, you owe it to yourself to be honest about that, and to beg forgiveness if that's the goal. I mean, I think the other thing that I appreciate is that I've got some colleagues, I won't say their names, who, are probably not going to be my closest colleagues ever. And they're clear about that. I'm clear about that. And that to me is what we put in the chat. That's the intention piece. So when people say, can you still develop trusting relationships with those people? Let me tell you, one of those colleagues was in crisis this week at the retreat, and it became very public, and I went to their aid, and a lot of people were struck by how I behaved. And to me, there's no contradiction between the fact that we're not the closest of colleagues, and a colleague in crisis still deserves assistance, because they're not putting on like I'm top of their list. I'm not putting on like they're top of my list. I think the frustration comes in when we pretend like we're friends, or we pretend like we're coworkers, or we pretend like we're, what do they call them, besties at work, or we pretend like we care how this made someone feel. And I was at a university, and I had a department. It's the only time I remember that I've had two bad department chairs in my career. This particular one I would describe as probably one of the most difficult. And so there was a day, I mean, I had seen the escalating tension between us. And of course, he's in a position of power. I'm a new assistant professor. He's my department chair, relatively new. So I saw the escalating, like his shortness with me, the way he was snippy in faculty meetings with me, the sarcasm on his voice, the looks on his face when I start talking or my students start talking. And one day I was in the main office and I was making some copies, and he came up to me and he like put his hand around my shoulder to be like, hey, Terrell, or good morning. But the way he did it was very hostile. It was very aggressive. it hurt. And I know it was intentional. Intentional. And when I called that behavior out, he gaslighted me like most people do. And that is, oh, well, you did this last time, or you said this last time, or aren't you being too sensitive? Or I'm just trying to, give you a heavy, next time I won't even hug you. Then, come on, you're not trying to hug me. You're trying to assault me. And whether you're assaulting my intelligence, my emotions, playing in my face, but hitting me on the back, I think that those kinds of behaviors are manipulation. And I know that's a word that scares most people. But when you say things to people, whether it's you lie to them or you lie about them, or you say something to them that's disingenuous just because you want to get something from them, their attention, their time, their support, their endorsement, whatever it might be, when you're saying it and it's disingenuous, that is the definition of manipulation, which makes that person then a manipulator. And when you have a history of doing that with people, then you become a master, or what they call a chronic manipulator. And as a psychologist, I know that chronic manipulation is a characteristic of people who have a whole range of kinds of mental health challenges and issues. So I don't dismiss these behaviors as just like, oh, they're just playing around, or they're just having fun, because it's not fun. It's fun to them, but it's not fun to the other person. So I think, one, to anyone who's ever experienced this in any domain of your life, don't diminish the importance of these behaviors. Pay attention. Pay attention not just to the incident, but the trend of these behaviors. And don't dismiss them as, oh, they're just being themselves, or, oh, and certainly do not internalize them and say, well, maybe it's me. Maybe I was wrong for asking. Maybe I was wrong for trusting. Maybe I was wrong for giving them another chance. Maybe I was wrong for taking them back on the team. Maybe I was wrong for whatever we blame ourselves for. That's, the consequence of dealing with manipulative personalities is that you end up hurting yourself mostly, because you've got to sit with the fact that no matter what, the way that they are conditioned and socialized is they cannot self-reflect. They cannot course correct. It's not that they cannot, they will not. They've been allowed not to. They've been allowed to deflect and place the blame elsewhere, which means you're going to be left with waiting for the apology, or waiting for the empathy, or waiting for the conversation, or waiting for, the text. And they're not going to send it because they've exonerated themselves. They freed themselves of the burden of the very behavior that they're, of the burden that their behavior created. You see it in the chat. Behaviors, intentions, commitments, to me, go together in building this apparatus of trust. I'll stop there, but I have another comment about some strategies that might work.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I got to check to see what's happening. Something's happening on LinkedIn.
That's what I was looking at myself.
Blowing up. I don't know why
So
it
give us
doesn't
a
come
moment to
into the
make sure that we
chat.
can put your comment on the screen. Are you gonna go? You're going to LinkedIn?
I'm trying to.
All right, that looks like there are two.
All right.
Nicholas Harlow and Sankofa. Okay. So while you do that, interesting points, valid points. I think that, you kind of shifted us to difficult conversations as well, is that when these things happen, that we enter into these conversations that are much needed. And although, first of all, yes, I guess they are difficult, but they don't have to be difficult. I think it's important that when you enter into these conversations with the person, you let it be known that you are not attacking them, but you want both of you, or however many people are a part of this conversation, to attack the problem together, so it can be resolved, hopefully never happen again. But going into that conversation and pointing the finger, telling someone off, what's that word we used last week, or you used last week? Crashing out. it's probably not the best approach.
Yeah. Thank you, Nicholas and Sankofa, for your comments. Others, please drop them in the chat. Glad to see that this is coming through, and we'll get you on the screen. And, I appreciate the love, my brother, Heartlip. Yeah, higher ed is like that. But let me tell you, I've seen it in lots of different places. Higher ed is like that. The world is like that. Unfortunately, work settings, regardless of your industry, can be like that. Friends can be like that. Family can be like that. And so you just have to, come to expect that these things can happen. And you got to know your worth. My mom always does a really incredible job of reminding me of a conversation we had years ago. She often says, "You're the one who taught me this phrase, teach people how to treat you." And she was telling me today that this is what I must do in some of the situations that I face. And, I think that that's true, that we have to expect that any person can, harm us, hurt us, disappoint us. And we used to say, my best friend and I would say that, what is it? People don't want us to pull a you. So don't let me pull a you on you. Like, in other words, you don't want me to treat you the way you treat me. You don't want, that supervisor, of course I couldn't have, I probably could have, but I mean, as an assistant professor working with the person who does my evaluations, it would not have been wise. But I kept thinking, he wouldn't want me to pull a him on him and walk up to him at the copy machine and be hostile and assault him and hard, kind of hit. Oh my goodness, good brother Chris Emden's out there. My brother and friend, love you, love and light. You are incredible and brilliant as well. And so thank you, Dr. McSwain. And we'll get those comments on the screen. But listen, these are really important conversations. When you go into work, here's the other thing I think people have to appreciate is that I used to say people don't get up in the morning and get dressed and go to work to be upset. They don't get up, go to work to be made to feel bad about themselves or to be belittled in some way. And certainly not, back to my story about the former department head years ago, to be hurt physically, psychologically, or emotionally. By the same token, people typically get up, and since she's out there, I may as well go ahead and talk about it. But people get up and go to work because they want to have fun. They want to, connect with their colleagues. They want to, I like collaboration and cooperation. And I think it's partly because in my zone of life, I work sometimes with people, but apart. So it's not like we're working on the same thing, but, this week on campus, my office is across the way from my colleague, and we keep our doors open. Not that we're working on the same document, not that we're working in the same spreadsheet, although sometimes we are, just because it's like good to be in community with one another. And we like each other. And by liking each other, we don't want to hurt each other. We don't want to let each other down. We don't want to do things that don't have to be done that we know will damage the other person's mindset, heart set, grip set, and their ability to be productive. I think if we could all appreciate that what's that phrase? Everyone that you meet is going through something. They're fighting some battle you know nothing about. Why complicate life for them by adding more fuel to the fire versus trying to see like, hey, issues will happen. I had a moment this week with a colleague where I thought what they said was less than accurate. I thought that what they said was less than kind and professional. And so I talked about it, and I didn't crash out. I don't crash out, but I did say, all right, let's discuss this. And here's what happened. And then I talked to the person later about it. I mean, I think it's, look, some people said to me, wow, you did a good job calling him out. So I'm not saying that you don't have to call out some behaviors. You should call out behaviors, especially behaviors that are inappropriate, behaviors that are unethical, behaviors that are, are unprofessional, and behaviors that harm you. But calling people out, as I write in the blog on Psychology Today, doesn't have to amount to crashing out. Crashing out is when one is bridled and unreserved in this highly volatile, expressive explosion of disdain and frustration, and it has no sign of emotional intelligence. I actually think if we're going to put it that way, the read of a lifetime, the really getting people together is not through the crashing out. It's when one can be emotionally intelligent and use their words, not their hand, use their vocabulary, not their fists. They can use their passion and their rhythm and their cadence to make it clear that I have energy about what just happened. But just to have energy about it doesn't mean I'm going to explode. Doesn't mean I'm going to throw hands. But I am, and even if I'm going to throw shade, I'm not going to throw hands. Even if I'm going to call you out, look, if you're serious about course correction, if you're serious about, and I know I've talked about this on the podcast, so I'll stop on this point, but I had an employee years ago who never came to work on time. And I talked to her about it. I wrote her up about it. She never improved. I talked to HR. They said, put her on a performance improvement plan. Even through that plan, I know she called me all sorts of names. I know it because my team told me that. But I mean, I wasn't being mean to her. It's just I had 15 people on my team coming to work on time. I'm not even 8 o'clock has to be 8 o'clock all the time. If you can tell me that you need until 8:05, but you use your words, use your phone, use something to communicate. And so eventually she didn't improve. So she was terminated. And, I heard later that she said things like, I fired her and I got rid of her. And I go to sleep at night knowing this. All she had to do was either come to work on time, 2, communicate why she was habitually late to work, or 3, give me another plan. Like, if you can't get there at 8, are you going to work 9 to 6? Are you going to work 10 to 7? Like, I'm that kind of leader. I'm that kind of supervisor. And we do that kind of work where there's some options. But to keep saying you're going to change your ways, you're going to show up on time, you're going to stop lying, you're going to stop communicating, and then keep doing it, at some point, okay, you're playing in my face and you're manipulating me. And all you want to do is hold on to a job or hold on to a paycheck when you have no intention of ever fixing the behavior. I think at that point, leaders and people have to be comfortable saying, okay, but here and no further. Like, every problem doesn't actually have to be fixed. Some problems may divide. Some problems may separate. Some problems may lead to separation, which is what happened in her case. And we just had to be comfortable with that and know I gave it my all. I gave her the feedback. I gave them the feedback. I gave them paths and options, and they're not rising to the occasion. So why should I keep suffering and being hurt in the process when, as you said earlier in the episode, the work must go on? The work is going to be done. And in this particular case, I knew for a number of reasons the work that she did was way too important to allow this relatively small issue, in my mind, compromise our success.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're signaling to others the standard. The standard is a standard. It's never going to change. You have expectations for team members, and that's what you expect. Uh, Too often, I think when we see one person get away with something time and time again, and we realize that is the expectations you set for the team really the expectation, or is it only for certain people? And that's when I think people begin to get around the I guess what do you call it, the Kool-Aid, and begin to talk, and that's what you don't want. So again, addressing the problem is key. Building relationships in the workplace is also something that must happen to get work done. Building trust. There are 3 elements: intentions, behaviors, commitments. I know you asked us 2 questions. Did we cover any of them?
Yeah, we did. So the first was we were sort of just hanging out around the issue of the importance of work relationships or workplace relationships. And so really talking about the barriers to trust. And we talked about it. I mean, dishonesty, gaslighting, you know, lack of communication. You know, I think it's clear, but, you know, with lack of communication, looking into the chat, and thanks to everyone who's put some comments in there. Have we shown them on the screen? I can't remember.
No, I don't think I have. I don't think I can do that, but they're in there.
All right, so let's put those on the screen so people can see them. But, you know, Nicholas brings up a point and says he's been reading in the institutional betrayal literature lately. And in that literature, it talks about the fact that we need leaders who will lead in brave ways. He then calls attention to institutionalized racism, classism, xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia. I don't know why we don't call this out, Nicholas, because we know this is true. Ageism is real in the academy. It's a reality in the world and higher education. And we need leaders who can interrupt this. And I think one of the challenges, I mean, look, I say all the time to folk, well, not all the time, I do say a lot though, that I've lived long enough, because I've passed my 5th birthday, to know that I'm Black. No matter what our shades are in this country, you get constructed a certain way. In a country that's preoccupied about the contrast between Black and white. And so I've known about race and racism and its importance since grade school. Lots of different examples of that. And I also know that classism is a thing, because, you know, I grew up in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I went to predominantly white schools growing up, where most of my classmates, their parents were doctors, lawyers, judges, and the like. And so they would talk in class about, you know, teachers would come to class and say things about, what country did you travel to this summer? That's a really interesting question to ask, especially when you're talking to a diverse group of students who some don't have resources to travel outside the country. So before I ever wrote about sense of belonging or unbelonging, I experienced it in classrooms from teachers who probably thought they were doing their best, but teaching in ways that divided us. And I know, since Chris is out there, those who don't know Chris Emdin, or if you do, I don't know how you couldn't, but look up his work, read his book. He talks about these principles, right, of how we can be sure that, especially when we are teaching in educational settings that don't match our lived experience or our expressed identities or our racial identity, how do we make sure that we're teaching in ways that all that language will come in, that's culturally relevant, that's culturally responsive, that is asset-based and not deficit-based? You got to think about these things, because we act pretty naturally in ways that are racist and sexist and classist and homophobic and transphobic and ageist. So that when we look at, I've had supervisors who will, regardless of where I am on the organizational chart, who will meet with me and say things like, hey, baby, oh, baby, little boy, oh, sweetie pie. And that is an expression of ageism. I get it. Some people say, no, that's just being polite. That's Southern culture, whatever it might be. Well, I've had that happen the most when I was not in the South. And so I think we have to appreciate the fact that it comes from this place of coddling kind of behavior, that sometimes when people see you and they see how you show up in the world, they equate that with a certain age, that they outrank, and therefore they feel like they can talk to you any kind of way, handle you any kind of way, coach or advise you any kind of way. And it can lead to really, really troubling behavior. So Nicholas is right. We do need leaders that can interrupt this. And to that credit, when it finally got to the point where I needed some support with this particular poorly behaved department head, I went to my senior colleague, who is also like a life friend and mentor, and told her. I bore the truth to her. And to her credit, this is why I think it's important to mention, she was not the dean. She was not the provost. She wasn't an assistant or associate provost. She was just a full professor who was tenured, who had the power to call out the behavior. And she knew that, as some of my colleagues say nowadays, who gonna check me, boo? So like, she did it. And I told her the truth, didn't lie to her, didn't sugarcoat, no fluff. And then she said, can I help you? And I said, yes. And she went straight to her colleague. To make the story even more magical, it was a full professor, tenured white woman who went and spoke to a full professor, tenured white man about how he was misbehaving and mistreating a pre-tenured African-American tenure track faculty member. And without courageous leaders like that, we don't interrupt and disrupt this behavior in the academy. It is costly. It can be terrifying. It can be dangerous, but we do need allies and supports in that way. You don't have to be white or black or tall or short or full or associate to do so. You just got to be, you have to have some bravery, some courage. You got to know what to say. Now, to people who are experiencing these things, look for support. Don't bear that by yourself, because I remember days where I felt pretty terrified because I thought, man, this guy is going to be evaluating me and I know he hates me. I don't even know why he hates me, or doesn't like me or doesn't support me, whatever it might be. You gotta, that can be damaging. It can be overwhelming. It can deflate your energy. It can zap you said it earlier, it can take morale to the floor. Hang on to hope and believe in yourself and know that these things, you're not hallucinating. These things are happening. They do happen, as Nicholas said in the chat. They do happen, unfortunately, in the academy and the workplace, and so we should certainly deal with them. So that was that final piece. I think the third question was around specific strategies that people can use to combat them. Again, maybe that's where we can wrap up is, if you're experiencing it, here's a good specific strategy. And I had to do this with this particular person, if I'm not mistaken. Keep notes when you can. I found myself starting to document the day and the time and the location when he hit me at the copier. I found myself adding to that roster the day and the time in the event where he left all of my doctoral students off the department's newsletter. I found myself documenting the times where he denied my request to purchase or my request to travel, though I had the grant funds to do so. And I didn't know at the time that I would ever need it. And in the end, I actually did not end up needing it, because what I didn't know is that the universe can be gracious to all of us. And so in the middle of this chaos, we actually reorganized into a new department, and my program got taken to another department where I had a much better department head. And that's why I just say, you don't have to throw words or hands or hate mail or lie and be deceitful. You can be honest and transparent and do good work, and the universe will bless your goodness. And before you even, crash out, it will spin you out or turn that situation around. And I didn't know that we were even, and I don't think we were considering new departments. I think that came from the administration, but ended up in a totally different department with a much better department head who treated me kindly. Those are a couple of strategies, I'd say.
Yeah, good strategy. I think as we wrap up, I would say if you are experiencing these things, something I've done in the past is have a witness, ask them to come to the meeting with you. And they don't have to speak, but just to be there to have someone else that can recall what transpired, what happened in the conversation. I think that, we can get into this he says, she says, she says, she said, he said, whatever. But having that extra person there that can, that is a bipartisan, that really has no, I don't want to say dog in a fight, but for lack of better words, a dog in a fight. And they just tell it how they see it. So again, if this is something that you are experiencing and you can bring someone else into it, just as a simple witness, that's something I would offer to you. So as you see on my screen, it was on Terrell's earlier, but I think that, technology is funky sometimes. Yep, over here, there is all of our social media. So be sure to follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok. TikTok on there? It is. And then on the other side, I'm gonna get better at that one day. Is what is that, Terrell? Creations by Kimmy, LinkedIn. So if not a LinkedIn, it goes to her form where you can order t-shirts, hoodies. I think that's where we're at right now. But again, if you can use your phone, take a picture, not a picture, but open your picture app, scan it, and order something from Creations by Kimmy. Take us home, T. Rizzy.
So hopefully you have found this episode enlightening. We see from the comments. Thank y'all for all the comments in the chat. It makes the show so much better when we can have some proof of life out there. But we hopefully you found this episode engaging and riveting. You're thinking about some of the issues around science and data and decision making, like that provided by some of our nonpartisan associations and officials out there, like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that you're thinking about some of the tips about entering into the job force, that you're going to check out some of those LinkedIn certificates and badges, as well as updating your resume using AI tools appropriately to make sure that it looks good, it's scan ready, and that you're also thinking about this last segment around workplace relationships and the value of them. I'm so excited because I know that some of my colleagues watch the podcast. Many of my colleagues actually watch the podcast. They listen to the things that are said on the podcast. They read the blogs, and I count myself blessed to have colleagues who and good productive working relationships that are filled in that way. So we're going to get ready for next week. We will let you know. So follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on X. You know how we do it. We'll put our flyer out. We've got a whole lineup of people, and we're looking forward to it. But if you're going to do something this week, don't be afraid to go out there and do something. Do something big. Do something productive. Do something good. And y'all know what we call it. Do good work. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to Do Good Work Podcast. We hope you found today's conversation informative, uplifting, and insightful. Don't forget to like and share this episode with your networks. Follow us on social media at Do Good Work on X, formerly Twitter, for real-time updates, behind-the-scenes content, and so much more. Until next time, friends, don't be afraid to do something, but do something good. Do good work.